Okay, so everyone heard that, so you know it's all recording. So like I said, this is tying it all together. So Banjo talked about challenge areas last week. So, and they tie into what we call PALs, or participate, assist and leads. All right, so participate is just showing up and doing. Okay, and assist is when your youth member helps out, and for a lead, they're the boss, they're running it. But to what standard? Well, to answer that question, we need to look at a couple of different things. Okay, what section they're in, because what's going to be a lead for a scout is going to be different to a rover, is going to be different for a Joey. All right, and it's also going to depend on the individual scout themselves. What we may expect out of somebody is going to be different what we expect out of somebody else. And what level or milestone are they up to? And we're going to talk about these and introduce them, but there's a 1, 2 and a 3. So what you're doing for the lower level, that level 1 milestone, we're going to expect more when you're doing that level 3 milestone. All right, so for a Joey, a lead may be just running a game or an activity on a night. Whereas if you're a scout, a lead may be running the whole night. All right, so different sections, we're expecting a little bit extra from those higher sections. So Pete, who's a milestone 3 scout, okay, assist may be assisting with running a game or an activity, just one. Whereas John on milestone 1, running a game or activity may actually be a lead. Okay, so for the higher levels, you know, running a game may just be assisting someone running the whole night, whereas for a lower level, running a game may actually count as their lead. So again, depends on where they're up to. Who decides? Unit council. Who decides nearly everything at the moment? Unit council. Okay, so as part of your unit council planning, when you're actually doing this, we need to decide what challenge area the night is going to be and who's leading it, who's assisting, what we're going to expect from them from a lead and what we're going to expect from them as an assist. Okay, so we need to make those fairly clear so people know beforehand. The last thing you want is a scout who thinks they're getting a lead, only getting assist or whatever, and then you have tiers or whatever over the whole thing. So milestones. Here's and they're all the same across them other than the colour, obviously. Brown or tan for Joeys, yellow for Cubs, green for Scouts, burgundy for Adventurous and red for Rovers. Okay, so level 1, 2 and 3. So milestone 1, now these examples are Scouts only because I'm a Scout leader type thing, but we will go through all of them. However, they don't all change depending on what they are. So milestone 1 is 24 participates, 2 assists and 1 lead. Now that will be the same across all the different sections, okay? For milestones, they don't change. What will change is what we define a lead and assist as. So for example, so for milestone 1, you can see most of it is about participation. So we've got that real emphasis on participation. We've only got 3 that are not participations. When it comes to milestone 2, okay, we now only need to do 20 participates, which is 5 in each of those challenge areas. We need to do 3 assists, which are on at least 2 different challenge areas, and we need to do 2 leads. So that emphasis has moved from just the participates into the coming towards more of a leadership role. Okay, and of course when we get to milestone 3, when we get to, there we go, when we get to milestone 3, again you can see that's really stepped up, and now we've only got 16 participates. We've got 4 assists across at least 2 challenge areas and 4 leads across any of the challenge areas. But in reality, you probably want them to, again, to spread them out over a number of different challenge areas, so that as they go up those milestones, more and more emphasis on becoming a leader within the troop, or within the unit, I should say. Naughty Ellen, got to use the right terminology. So you can see here, this is a manual version of the patrol recording. We got a scout name, whether we're working on milestone 1, 2, or 3. We've got our participates across the different areas and our assist and our leads that we can keep track of. Okay. We've got scout terrain, which some people love, some people hate, and I'm not going to dive into it too much here because I know a lot of groups are at very different stages. There's some that still haven't even started with terrain. There's others that are kind of dabbling in it and some that are well and truly all over it. So I'm not going to dive into it too much. It certainly should be something that you are looking at a district type level and training up within the group or within in your district, in your Mindaris and the Sionis and what's the Joey one again? Walla Windari? No, I can't remember what it's called now.
Waratah.
That's the one. I knew it started with W because my daughter goes to them every once in a while. So how do we get into terrain? Well, it's down the bottom there, terrain.scouts.com.au. It's fairly easy to find. You need to select a branch. Hopefully everyone knows they're in Victoria. Yeah. Everyone not enthusiastically. Yes, Alan. Cool. And your membership number. Now, if you don't know it off the top of your head, us old folks unfortunately have put it in so many times I can rattle it off the top of my head. But if you've got your scout card, do they still issue scout cards? You guys all got scout cards? Some it always makes me fun. Some are nodding, some are, depending on how quickly you've signed up. You should get it when you get your certificate, your membership certificate. That's the number there. And then your date of birth is your password to start with. And it's in the backwards format of year. So for in Lynn's case, that would be 1852. Okay, then a dash, and then the months, which in Lynn's case would be 11, 12, 12, and then a dash, and then 18. Okay. 24. I don't know. I can't remember. I just remember the year, 1852. It's a long time ago. You look very good. Okay. If you really don't know your scout number and you don't know where to find it, if you email me, I've got them all on your enrolment form so I can give them to you. I think everybody starts with I can't see. Everyone probably should start with an 8 still. I don't think we've clocked over. No. Some of you old people, Daryl, might have something lower. Mine starts with a 1. Lynn's so old that hers starts with 2 zeros. Not just 1 0, 2 zeros.
Oh, right. Yeah. Nothing to do with my age, can I just say, just for the years of service.
It's because he's really old. Really old.
Mine's got 2 zeros in it too.
In it, or at the start of it?
400.
400. There you go. So somebody in the mid 80s kind of thing, probably, or early 80s. Yep. So yeah, in Victoria, they've obviously just sequentially come up over, especially since the mid 70s or whatever it was that they did that. All right, come on. My computer's playing up with me so far today. Now, this is a fantastic but very, very busy slide, and you can actually buy these from the Scout shop in A0, so anybody knows, it's really big, and you can have it on your wall, but they cost a kidney and well, you know, and if you've got some joeys who are hyperactive, just take their kidneys. It's usually the best way of slowing them down, but we can put it up in the hall if you want. And they're talking about the journey or the achievement pathways. Now, what we need to understand is because of the way that everything's structured, and particularly when we look at our SIAs and our OANSs, which we're about to start looking at again, everybody's going to be doing something slightly different, okay? So everyone's journey throughout their peak awards and throughout the scouting journey is going to be very different depending on what they want to look at. Whereas, in the past with the older program, it was much more defined, and you find that most of the scouts did pretty much the same thing, whether they'll be joeys, whether they be cubs, whether they be whatever. So if you think about joeys, you only had 4 badges that you could possibly even go for. You know, your promise challenge, your sleep out badge, I can't remember what the other 2 are. I know they're orange ones that go in the sleeve. I forget. It's a bad scout leader. Doesn't remember. Okay. But with this one, everybody's got their own path they can choose. And one of the things that they regularly say is everybody's path's going to be different, and that's okay. So again, we're going to concentrate on scouts only because I'm a scout leader, but we will go through all of them at the end. So an introduction to scouting. So this is only if you're new. It used to be the old world membership type thing, and it's a bit more formal now, but part of being introduced into the scouting movement and then being awarded your world badge as part of your investiture. Introduction to section, we've got rid of what we used to call the link badges. The fear was that, and the feedback was that a lot of them found it quite scary because they were breaking from one group and starting with another group. Okay, so there wasn't, and part of that, the reasons we're talking about it as the one journey is so that we take some of that fear away. So the introduction to section, and it's fairly basic, talking about some of the bits and pieces and some of the things that are unique to each section as they come up. We've got milestone 1, 2, and 3, which we've just talked about. Now, if for the peak award, they must do milestone 3. Okay, that doesn't mean you don't get them to do milestone 1 and 2, but it does mean that if someone comes into the movement quite late, for example, so they've come into scouts at 13 and a half, we don't expect them to start off at milestone 1 and then try to waste through all to finish milestone 3 all within the year to 18 months that they're going to be there. We can start them off at another level, but for your peak award, you must have that milestone 3. All right. So we've talked about the milestones and all of those. So the next one is we're going to talk about is those outdoor adventure skills, the OASs. And again, we talked about these last week. We did those exercises. We've got our core, then our water and our land. Oh no, they're not broken up that way. It goes like that, a zigzag. There's our water and there's our land. All right. And each one of those have 9 levels. And we talked about this last week. Now I'm going to go back and show you that slide that we did last week because I thought it was really quite cool. So for Joey's, we need to get level 1 for camping, bushcraft and bushwalking. That's the 3 that they need as that part of it, plus they'll need their milestones and whatnot to do that, to achieve their peak award. When we move on into cubs, we then need stage 3 in those cores, so there's 6 there that we need to get, and we need a total of 8 progressions, so we need to do some progressions somewhere else. And again, remember, this is what I was saying last week also. It's important that we realise it's progressions in section, not progressions since peak award. So cubs, I'm going to pick on you guys because cubs are the ones that have a tendency to do it. They do a whole lot of progressions here while they're in cubs. Only the first 8 count, and then when they move to scouts, it resets. So I'm not going to say they're wasted, but they're not going to count. So for scouts, we need to be stage 5 in core. Now, bushcraft splits at stage 4. Okay, so it doesn't matter which stage 5 they're up to, whether it's pioneering, whether it's survival skills, I think that one is. Okay. And then we need to do, so there's another 6, plus we need to do a couple more over here. So again, as we go up the sections, what we're expecting them to achieve in those 3 years is growing. Now, when we get into Adventurous, it's now 12 progressions in total, and 4 of these must be at level 4 or above. So you can see here, we've put in our 12 progressions and we've highlighted those that are over level 4, and you can see here we've got 6, so we've well and truly covered those 4 progressions above. And when we move into Rovers, we now need to get 14 progressions overall, 6 of which must be 4 or above. Okay, now remember stage 9 and 8 are really, really challenging. If you're in stage 9, you're probably fairly elite. Okay, we talked about the camping one. No, it was bushwalking last week with stage 9. We saw you had to do an interstate trip and you had to have at least 60 nights, and there was a whole of other bits and pieces that needed to be done. So
that was the camping one.
The camping one, was it?
Yeah.
I can't remember. But you can see here we've managed to get through all of our progressions, and we've spread it over a number of different areas, and we're still only up to stage 7, so we really haven't done that. Whereas you got, I don't know if you guys know Kent, who's a rover over at, he runs Everest LePage, or he's a crew over at Everest LePage. Okay, he's one guy that I would say is definitely at a level 9 when it comes to some of these core ones. For fun, he did a 60-day by himself trip that involved skiing, canoeing and hiking through 4 different states because he could, because that's what he loves to do. Okay, so there's someone that is definitely probably at that stage 9, but you're not going to see a lot of stage 9s. You're certainly not going to see an armful of stage 9s in anybody. All right, so we've talked about our program essentials, we've talked about our outdoor skills. Now we need to talk about special interest areas again. And this is why we did all these last week, because we've now covered these and we've talked about all of these already. So our adventure and sport, our arts and our literature, creating a better world, environment, growth and development, and STEM and innovation. And we talked about that, and we actually went through that planning process for bits and pieces. Okay. So we need one of each of those for our peak award. And for Scouts, it's 8 hours each. Anyway, oh, sorry, it's from at least 3 areas. I thought they had to be one from each, but obviously we can double up by looks of things. I disagree with that, but anyway, we'll come back to that. I didn't believe that was the way it was. Additional things we need for our peak award, we need to do a leadership personal development course. Now, there's a lot of districts that run that. If you are lucky enough to be in Monash District, who's in Monash District? There's a couple of you in there. Okay, and the person, or in my book anyway, is on my screen right down the bottom is the district scout leader, and he makes me come once a year for a weekend. Oh, it's been one of those days, and run, because he usually runs it at my hall. So we have fun, but lots of districts still run them. I believe they've now changed this, and the other thing you can do is it can be a management course. Doesn't necessarily have to be a leadership course per se. I think they're now calling it a management course, which is usually a weekend. Adventurous journey. Okay. Hang on. Let's talk about this one first. So our leadership or our personal development course, completed at any time, and should allow a scout to put into practice some of the skills they have learned during their time in the section, and should involve some problem solving, communications, team management, leadership planning and community involvement. Now, certainly in my unit and most other people's units, we try to get new PLs or APLs into that leadership course, so they've got some time to learn these skills and then develop those skills and do it. There's no point putting them in 10 weeks before they go up to Adventurous, because obviously they're going to learn the skills, they're not going to have time to practice it. So we try to get it. Now, this is going to vary based on age. There isn't one for the Joeys. For the Cubs, it's a 1-day course. For the Scouts, it's a weekend course. And I think for Adventurers and Rovers, it's the same thing. Are you after me?
Yeah, that's right. Just while Al's busy, I'll just read to you that in regard to those special interest areas, straight out of the book, in the Scout section, so this is Scouts, but it'll be similar for the other sections. In the Scout section, each project should take approximately 8 hours of effort. In order to achieve your peak award, you will need to complete 6 interest area projects across at least 3 different areas. So if you've got 3 areas of interest, you could do 2 in each one. That would be okay, but it has to have totally 6 out of 3 areas.
It is out of 3 areas, is it?
Yeah.
No.
I've
got it wrong. There you go. Oh, bugger, this is being recorded. Oh, no. I don't have to share. I can cut that bit out. I share it.
You always cut me out anyway.
So the adventurous journey, again, will depend on the level, and when we go through everybody, all the different levels, we'll have a look at this. Needs that can be completed after commencing milestone 3. Okay, so for the older I don't know if there is anyone who probably knows the old section now. That used to be when you'd started your adventure, or the green badge. In general, the following apply as requirements. It can take one of many different forms. Doesn't necessarily have to be a hike. So you can paddle, you can ride, you can ski. Now, I'm not in the Adventurous section, and my kids aren't in the Adventurous section anymore, and they're not doing rovers. So I'm not going to have this fight, but it's one that I'm not sure will work for driving. I don't know if that will count, because in the past they've deemed an adventurous journey must be self-propelled, is one of the arguments. So
that is actually in the official rules.
it is in the official
It
rules.
must be human powered.
Okay, so you can't go forward driving in your adventure or rover. I also think one of them used a powerboat and a sailboat, so I'm not sure where they would fit in. I'd say a powerboat would be a definite no-no, but potentially a sailboat.
I would think
you
a
could argue for.
sailboat, because there's a massive amount of skill, being a Sea Scout leader, there's a massive amount of skill in actually getting the boat to propel forward in its right thing, and if there's a lot of wind, you've got to hang out and so on. So I would
Stick your sail up and away you go, isn't it?
yeah, that ends badly. I reckon that you would be very hard fought to fight if they didn't allow that, because I don't think Dave, the water activities person, would be.
Yeah,
he would be
especially because there is a sailing arm of your OASs.
Yeah.
Yep.
And there's a whole team around it. So.
It should help the scout connect with nature and the outdoors. So that probably rules out forward driving again anyway. It should allow a scout to put into practice some of the skills they have learnt during their time in the section. All right, so we can go back to arguing the four-wheel drive and mud bash, but anyway, I digress because I'm into four-wheel driving. Scouts will go on their adventurous journey with other capable scouts. Okay, remember we talked about the 2 up and 2 down. So if you're doing an OAS, if you're at a stage 5 or a stage 6, you can only have people that on that which are either just above or just below that, and that becomes an OH&S thing as well.
Oh, just sorry.
Yes.
It's an old question, but it's a question that isn't answered yet. So if I can take someone from above and someone from below with me, that's fine. But can the person have done their journey at the level I'm doing, because that wasn't allowed under the old system? Then I don't know if it is a new one.
It won't obviously count as their adventurous journey, but it could count as one of their journeys for their core, for example, camping.
No, but if I'm doing my adventurous journey, can I take someone who has already done their adventurous journey? Because in the past you were not allowed to do that.
Yes, as long as they're not leading at all.
Wow.
They're just,
oh
there is a
my
number.
God. Right, okay.
Because the other thing is you can potentially take a venture with you because you've got that up and down.
So we know that kids that have already done it tend to take over.
Yeah, well, that's the big issue. You then have to make sure.
It was a no-no, absolute no-no in the past. So, right here, that's right. Just one clarification. Sorry, didn't want to interrupt everybody.
Party size will be informed by the risk assessment. So where you're going will be part of the issue. You're obviously going to have a minimum number if it's hiking or whatnot. The old rule that you've got to have one to get injured, one to get help, and one to apply first aid. So you always have to have a minimum of 3 type thing. But depending on where you're going, what that would be. Scouts need to be involved throughout the whole plan, do, review process of the journey, especially in that older section. They really need to be driving it. But in the younger sections, it may be a little bit more guided, we'll talk about. And your national and states policy and risk, which we're going to talk about next week, need to be followed. And everyone's slightly different in all the states, but there are some national ones that we follow fairly rigorously. Personal reflection is the last part of that. Now, the way it reads, it's very much, it needs to be something that's written. And we all know nobody's going to want to do that. All right. So really doesn't have to be a written report. It can be, and you can see down here, written video, a presentation, a picture, a collage, or a combination of all these. I would actually have a tendency to go with a presentation or a picture collage for, especially if it's a for a peak award, because then it becomes very easy to then use that at an ARAP. You all know what an ARAP is, don't you? Just the scout word for AGM, basically. And then that becomes something that they can present there for flowing accolades and all that kind of bits and pieces and pats on the backs and whatnot. And during their actual presentation, their peak award, you can, again, you can use some of these to decorate the hall. I know Daryl's Venture unit, when he was a Venture leader, their Queen Scout Awards, they had lots of bits and pieces like that. They had shirts from jamborees and cubbarees and all that kind of stuff always out when they were doing Queen Scout presentations.
Portfolio of evidence.
Folio of evidence, there you go. But it's
Portfolio.
more than that, but like I said, you used to have the jamboree shirts and all those kind of things out and about as well. Now we are going to go through each and look at every different section, but before I do we have any questions or queries on any of that? Stunned silence.
Just one question. Actually, I've got a question from earlier as well, but just one question.
Yep.
With the participates, assists and leads, does the scout that's leading the thing also get to participate for the same night, or do they have to be separate nights?
Separate nights.
Beautiful.
And I've got a question, if that's all right.
Yes. But only one. You can only have one.
So we were told during the week that, say, if you're on milestone 1 and you do 2 leads in that section, the milestones actually don't carry over to your next milestone if you're in excess of the ones that you want on terrain.
That's
For
a terrain
leads.
thing.
Yeah, it's a terrain
Yes,
thing
yeah.
for leads. If you lead and you've got an excess of leads already, it will count as a participate, I believe.
Okay.
So the trick obviously is that that's then stealing a lead from somebody else. So it becomes a management thing, and this is one of the big problems with the new program and whatnot, is making sure everybody gets the right amount of leads and assists and participates and everything, especially if you're in a bigger type unit. So you've got to think, if you've got a Glenn Waverley's, I'm not sure if she's popped in or not yet. They've got 36 scouts at the moment. She's down the bottom. I can't see her. Oh, yes. Yes, you've come in without video. That's why I can't see you. They've got 36 scouts, so trying to make sure you don't want to waste a lead on someone doubling up. So there is a bit of management there that you've got to do. Yes. No other questions? Cool. All right, let's have a look at all of them. All right, so the Peak Awards, we've obviously got new Peak Awards and new Peak Award badges. Skippy, a wolf, obviously, for the grey wolf. Scout section, coat of arms with the squash butterfly. Oh, no, of course not, the new logo, and I'll let it call it squash butterfly. How many times have I got in trouble for that one? Venture section with still the Queen Scout, still got that crown, so it's very similar to the old Queen Scout. And the Rover section, the BP Award, again, looks very fairly similar to what it used to. Now, the thing we're going to remember is not every Scout will aspire to reach a Peak Award, and that's okay. Okay, and I come from a unit that traditionally doesn't have a lot of people going through it, but that's fine. What we have a tendency to find is we get lots that end up going, you know what, I had fun in Scouts and whatnot, I'm going to really push for my badges, my Queen Scout, especially now that a lot of them are tied into getting Cert 2 and Cert 3 qualifications as well, and you can then use that and part of your university entrance. So we find that some of them are motivated enough to get some badges, but not all the way. But when they get to Adventurous, they normally are. But that's fine. All right, so let's look at the Joeys. You can see the big thing with the Joeys is they don't have the course down the bottom. All right, but we still got 24 participates, 2 assists and 1 lead for Milestone 1, Milestone 2 and Milestone 3. What really would change is what we define as a lead and assist at that level. So you may end up having a night where you've got 3 Joeys that earn a lead type thing. OASs, we've just got that level 1 in our core area, so bushwalking, would you believe, camping and bushcraft. All right, special interest areas, 6 badges, 2 hours each from at least 2 areas, so we can double up there. Adventurous journey, it's a 3-hour walk, really. If nothing else, you don't have to carry Joey's home 6 hours into a walk. And a bit of a personal reflection. And there's one that we definitely would suggest maybe a bit of a video or, just a collage of pictures and a bit of a talk with them. And it's something that you're probably going to have to lead them a little bit more than you would any of the other section, talking through it.
My understanding with the journey is the prepare time and the reflection also counts towards the hours as well. So it's not necessarily 3 hours of physical activity.
Yes, and that's going to include a break. So really, even if it was going to be a 3-hour walk, it's actually 2 hours worth of walking and a bit of prep time at the beginning, making sure they've got all their bits and pieces tied down and whatnot. They've got the drink bottles full and all that, and then a break, if not 2 breaks in the middle of the walk as well. So yeah. All right, yellow section, the cubs. Again, this hasn't changed other than what our definition or what our level we would expect them to do for their assist and their leads. We've now got stage 3 for those 3 core plus another 2. And it could be in one area or it could be across 2 different areas. All 6 badges, 4 hours each from at least 2 areas. A leadership or a personal development course of at least 1 day. Most cub leadership courses are only 1 day. An adventurous journey, again, 4 hours. So it's only a little bit longer than what we would be doing with a Joey. So really, it'd probably be pretty much the same with a little bit extra in there. An extra hour would, again, probably be probably not even 4Ks at that age, although they're not carrying a full pack or anything, but they'd still only be walking about 3 to 4K an hour anyway. Again, you've got to allow for breaks and all those other bits and pieces in there. And again, a personal reflection, which again, I would suggest is not going to be too onerous and written like the good old venture section ones used to be. Now, Scouts, we've had a good crawl through this one already. Our adventurous journey here is at least 3 days and 2 nights. All right. So that's fairly standard to what it used to be. Although I think Scouts used to be measured more in kilometres than in time frame. So again, this has changed because we're now encouraging all forms of not just hiking, but, cycling, skiing, all that kind of stuff.
Al?
Yo.
Just, sorry, it's on it again. I just checked the book on that 3 hours or 4 hours for Joey's. 3 hours for Joey's and 4 hours for cubs. I don't have the Joey book, but it does say in the cub one, which I assume would be similar, to plan a journey of at least 4 hours duration. That would imply that the journey was 4 hours rather than the planning and whatever stage. So I don't know, maybe you need to check with your district team just to get guarantee on that, because the way I would read that is that the journey had to be that amount of time.
Yes, where the confusion might be is that the special interest areas, where it says 4 hours for the special interest area, that 4 hours includes your planning, your doing and your reviewing. Whereas with the adventurous journey, the journey needs to go for the length of time specified, and then your planning and your reviewing is on top of that. So they've just tried to confuse us there.
And they've done a brilliant job at confusing us too.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, and I'm definitely not going to say this, and I'll bugger recording this, so I'm going to get in trouble. As long as the unit council's happy. Now, this 4 hours, if it's 3 hours and 59 minutes, we're going to say no to them, But if it's only a half-hour journey, then obviously, having said that, I've seen some cubs that probably a half-hour journey would be the equivalent to most other cubs' 6-hour journey. So, again, we've got to make sure unit council is happy. So there's Scouts. We've gone through that. Venturers, the smelly section. I mean, the wonderful section. Again, those milestones haven't changed. Just what we expect as a lead and assist will. We need to be into level 5, bushwalking, camping and bushcraft. Now remember, that's level 5 is the same as Scouts, is the same as Rovers. All right, so some people will progress on these and some won't. We need 12 progressions in total in the section, 4 of which must be at stage 4 or above. Special interest areas, 12 hours each from at least 3 areas. Leadership or personal development, or I believe now that included in there is the unit management one, at least a weekend. Adventurous journey needs to be 4 days and 3 nights. So what's going to be the key one for Venturers, of course, is picking some time when they can get, 4 days and 3 nights in. Probably also with enough support from their parents who would need to drop them off or whatever. School holidays obviously makes the life a little bit easier for some of them, but yeah. And rovers, the Joey's just with a different colour. Again, there's those stage 5, which they probably would have already achieved in other sections. So, but they need 14 progressions overall, 6 of which need to be at 4 or above. 6 badges from at least 4 different areas that are 18 hours each. Now remember, of course, the other beauty with rovers is not only are they really adults, and they should be stepping up a little bit more because they're, in theory, much more responsible and adult-like. They've also got much longer in the section. So it goes from 18 to 26 rather than 15 to 18 like the other, all the other sections are 3 years. So not only do we make it harder because they are big, but they also make it harder because they've got that much more time in the section to do it. A leadership course of at least 30 hours duration. All right, so we're looking at probably over 2 weekends. Adventurous journey at least 4 days and 3 nights, and a personal reflection. And again, we'd be expecting a little bit more from a personal reflection from that level than we would from one of the other ones. Is there any questions on any of that?
Can I profess a personal interest and ask
Yep.
what the supervision requirements are for the Scouts Adventurous journey?
A lot's going to depend on your risk assessment. Lynn, who's just run away, Lynn, a lot of the time will drop them at one point, drive to where they should be at lunchtime and meet up with them at lunchtime, and then drive where they should be camping. Having said that, which is it's kind of depending on the terrain and the levels, what I normally do, but if you go somewhere like Wilson's Prom, for example, you can't drive in. So what we used to do was we'd go up, if anyone knows Wilson's Prom, the top of the, not Oberon, that's further down, that's the bay, whatever the little mountain there is, where the car park, we threw them out there. We went back down, went and got a coffee from the coffee store, came back up, parked the car up there, and then we were walking behind them. And then they knew that we were about half an hour to 45 minutes behind them. So if something went wrong, and it was urgent, either one of them ran back and got us and managed to hustle us along, or if something went wrong and it was only minor, they could just wait for the half hour or whatever until we caught up with them, and then we could help them if they needed it to have happened. Obviously, we're camping in roughly the same areas. The first night for the Green Court hike, I'm thinking there we're at, is it called Middle Bay or no, the Middle or something? I can't remember what it's called now. And we were with another, there was actually 3 scout troops there. We kind of went over there and they were over there. So we're in the same area, but we weren't with them type thing. So we had that indirect supervision even though we're at the same spot. So if that makes sense, you can do it that way. For your Venturers, and we've done this when my daughter was a Venturer, we dropped them off at one point and we went to the end point and they appeared 2 days later and we took them home type thing, and we just sat around and talked crap and enjoyed the peace until we heard them. We could hear them coming around. We did a bit of forward driving by ourselves. That was in the high country. It wasn't too hot, wasn't too cold. It was March from memory. So it was a nice day and we had fun. The other guy was a fisherman, so he did some fishing and I sat there and studied the back of my eyelids type thing.
Is that
so
the one
yeah.
in the Ridgies?
Yeah, that was the one into Ritchie's and out again. Russell and I, who's one of the other dads, yeah, we just hung around. It was too far to drive home and we were quite happy to camp the couple of nights there type thing. So yeah, a lot depends on where it is and what you can do. where you can drop them off, so whether you walk behind them. If they're being nice and then walk in a nice loop like that, you can probably even stay, drop them off, go bye, and then wait for them to reappear type thing. Have you
I
got
was told that was sort of the old system, and under the new system, they sort of had to be on their own for the full sort of 3 days, 2 nights. And
yeah, but again, you've got to have that OH&S component of it, that you've got to be comfortable. Having said that, I was talking to a venture leader in Queensland, and like literally they waved goodbye to mum and dad, and they caught the bus or the train or whatever it is out to wherever it was, and then from there they hiked into the bush and then reappeared 3 days later, and they were quite happy with that. If you got an EPIRB or a spot, which I just happen to have, have one here, and that's a way of electronically tracking them, and they can press that, and as long as they can see the sky, which most of the time you can with Scouts, they can send little messages and you can keep track of them that way. And just being in the same area. So, for example, they might be hiking through Thompson's Dam, so you can find a spot there and just camp there, and you're close enough that if something goes wrong, you can get in there quickly and deal with it, but they're really on their own type thing.
it sounds like it's pretty flexible depending on the kids and the situation. That's probably the key thing. They've had 2 years inside, so letting them loose for 2 days on their own is a big ask straight up. But
that's when you just tie a bit of string to the back of their belt and just let it spool out, so you can follow them that way.
The key thing is obviously to pick your kids, because sometimes you don't always have the best team to go with the person. So the person might be quite confident, but the team that's with them may not be, or the team that's with them may be a little bit naughty, or something along those lines. You've got to use some really serious common sense here, and so I always make a decision about how close we're going to be to them based a lot around that. And so sometimes if you've got really responsible kids, and I've done it with lots of kids, we've just done the, drop them off at the start, finish at the end. They've got to check in on the spot. We have a spot for our group. They've got to check in on the spot. Whereas other kids and other groups, we've had the meetings, where they have to do the spots is on their map. So where they've worked it all out, we've agreed with it, all of that sort of thing. But in point of actual fact, we will go in and see them. We won't talk to them. It'll be like a cheers, big ears, keep going, that sort of thing. But there's been times where it's not the patrol leader, well, not the patrol leader, it's not the person that's getting the award's fault, that they have had to take a group of kids that are probably not the best group of kids, not the ones you definitely choose. And sometimes they choose them, which is even worse. So, out of your own duty of care, you have to feel that you are comfortable with that. So they know that they're not going to get any help. They're not going to get any assistance, obviously, unless it's a disaster. But for some groups that have gone out, I have definitely felt like we have had meeting spots, and they know that if I'm not at the meeting spot when they get there, they just leave me a message and off they go. They're going to push the spot anyway. So that's it, and I'll know whether they're in front of me or behind me. But there's times when we've just had to do that, and there's other times where, like I say, I haven't seen the kids for the whole trip. So, it's real. I think it's all about making sure that you and them are safe. Walking with them has never, ever for Scouts been one of the things that I've done. So I have never walked with a group of kids, not because I don't like hiking, because I do, but it's all about making sure that they know it. Nate followed one group once. They stayed a long way behind the kids. As soon as they could hear the kids, they dropped back. It was 2 very young leaders that I put out with that group of kids just to get a sense of what it was like to do it. So I actually did it as a training thing for the young leaders. And that was really good. He got the idea of it. As it turned out, in the only place that they didn't have any contact with me, we had 3 hours of non-stop rain. It did not move at all on the radar, and I could see it. And so it kind of worked out well that ultimately they did make decisions with the approval of the leaders. So the Scouts made the decisions, but that sort of just turned out well that particular time. That's the only hike that I've ever put leaders out with kids. So, and they weren't with them, they were behind them. So.
At the end of the day, if it goes wrong, it's your head on the chopping block.
pretty much. But you want them to have that experience, and you want them to think that they're alone, and you want them to think that, you know, I mean, I just, you know, even my worst kids, it's like walk behind, like I said to Nate that day, walk behind, but as soon as you can hear them, you need to stop, and you need to, and if they're sitting, stopping and talking for an hour, then you've got to just sit and twiddle your thumbs for an hour without them seeing that you're there. I think it's all about the experience for the kids, and actually ultimately that's exactly what happened, and that's why they ended up in the rain. And then the stupid rain just wouldn't move. So it was actually a really good lesson all around, really, as it turned out. And everyone was safe, as it turned out, because Kim went back and got a big fire going. And that was me risk assessing as well, can I just say.
Thank you for that.
I know we're going to talk about risk assessing till next week. I'm probably stealing some of Banjo's thunder, but it is something that you've just got to have, even if you're not always writing it down, it's something that always has to be playing through your mind, and you're looking at those kind of things, and you're on your toes, and always, especially in those older sections, Scouts, Adventurous and Rovers, you've always got to be thinking about, you know, what could potentially go wrong. Now, you don't necessarily need to interfere, but you may want to put hints in there, or if it gets too risky in your mind, you may want to step in then. But yeah, you need to always have that at the back of your mind. And as Daryl said, if something goes really, really, really pear-shaped, it's you that's going to end up in front of the coroner's court explaining why, how, what did you have in place, all that kind of stuff. So you really got to think about it, and you really got to be comfortable with yourself. That, you know, if these were your kids, literally your kids, you know, your flesh and blood, would you be happy for them to do that? Then yeah. So.
In my case, it is. So that's probably part of the reason I'm twice as paranoid.
Well, sometimes that's a really good reason to then go, you know what, I'll let one of the other leaders just make sure. But yeah, so you're not being too much of a mother hen, which is.
And I would actually recommend that you don't do any testing or signing off of your own children, and that other leaders always take the lead on that. And you don't want it to cause a family issue, but you also don't want at some stage later for kids to say, oh, you got it because your parent was a leader, or you didn't get it because your parent was a leader. You know, it just keeps that one step of two. Yep. I've had 3 kids go through it, and I didn't assess any of theirs at all. I didn't always agree with the decision the other leader made, but I just had to shut my mouth and let it happen. So it was really bad.
And at the risk of offending a couple of you, my group, we don't allow leader hops. So if you start off at Joey's with your Joey, and then they go to Cubs and you become a Cub leader, and then you come to Scouts. When you come to Scouts, I just turn you around and go, no, you're going back to Cubs. All right. So, and it's really tough. I mean, both my kids, I was a Scout leader before they were Scouts. So in that way, I kind of broke that rule that my kids were Scouts and I was the Scout leader, but only because I wasn't leader hopping, following them up. My personal opinion, and I've pushed this more than once, is you're not letting the kids grow, you know, and get out from underneath you, and that's really tough, you know. And for you, I understand that, but you know, that's the whole point of Scouts or the Scouting movement in general is getting out and experimenting and finding out and learning boundaries and all that kind of stuff. So it's tough if mum or dad follows them through the whole section. Any other questions or queries? James, you're disagreeing with me, or you...
I completely agree. I've got 3 daughters and I have no intention of following them all the way through. I want to dump and go. Dump and go.
I'm pretty sure they probably won't let you anyway.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, yes. My daughter has so many stories of how I embarrassed her when I was the Scout leader, and she was a PL in particular, and Jamboree and all that kind of stuff. So anyway.
My daughter's in Rovers and I'm in a different Rover crew.
It's the perfect way of doing it, Daz. All right, Lynn, are you ready?